All right.
All right, welcome to the first episode of, I don't know what we're calling this, Tech Talk, something like that. Taking a very agile approach to setting up the podcast here, and we're gonna ship a product and see how it does out there, and then we'll make it better every time a little bit. So
Right. Yeah. MVP all the way.
we're welcoming Geoff Sproat, Product Manager Extraordinaire. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Any
Yeah,
any
so
job title, as soon as you put extraordinaire on the end of it, it sounds fantastic. So
yeah, I like to do, if it wasn't a lawyer thing, I would do Esquire. I feel like that would just work well, but
mhm,
yeah.
it's a little bougie.
It's better that, like the people on their email or whatever, where they've got just like a gang of initialisms, like these are all of the classes I've taken.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've lost track of all of the like CSPO and CSPM and CPM as like I have no idea. Just tell me, are you a scrum master or a product manager or Q, like
Yeah.
what's your thing? What's your purview? So
Well, that's kind of an interesting thing, and maybe the first question for you there is like all of these different job titles. It seems like every 3 years or so they just come out with a new title for basically the same thing, and all these different. There's like a million different job titles out there now for working in technology as a non-developer, but as a product manager and thinking about product, like how do you think about product management, either as a role or as a practice?
whew, um, that's an interesting question, and I think I think product management is sort of the connective tissue in the brain of a product development team. Um, you're sort of I think you're positioned really well to help the left and the right hemispheres communicate sometimes by not being an expert necessarily in one domain or another, but having a little bit of common sense when it comes to those two domains.
Yeah.
It helps you, I think, provide interpretations between the two and make sure that they're functioning together. Talk resolving semantic differences, resolving the disagreements that can come when engineering has one set of priorities and perhaps design has the more creative side of the house has different priorities and trying to make it coherent, just like the whatever that part of your brain is that exists right down the middle.
Yeah.
So not to be too philosophical about it, but
Sure.
you're trying to take those two separate halves and get shit done.
Yes. That's another aspect of it is like how do you think about it, or maybe even like where do you prefer to sit, because there's different layers of product management where there's the more tactical to the more strategic. Like how do you think
Mm-hmm.
about that?
Yeah, for me, it's probably one of the bigger sources of stress sometimes in different roles is uh, how much of the tactical versus the strategic the person doing the product management role um, intends to bring to the role, and then how
Right.
much of that, what if that mix actually lines up with what the organization has an expectation of for that person. So for me, I like to have a little bit of a sense of all of it that's going on. I love the tactical wins.
Yeah.
I love being in the weeds with designers and engineers and QA and helping to resolve those problems or understand the problem space a little bit more. But I really like the long term, the strategic planning, understanding the business development side of things, interacting with partners outside of the org. So yeah, for me, I have to have a little bit of both to
Yeah.
for it to be interesting to me.
Sure.
But yeah, I think the more tactical it gets, the more that I think it falls on the spectrum of what I would consider a product owner versus a
Right.
product manager.
Yes. They both have the word product in them though, so it's easily confused.
Hmm.
I always felt like I was more of a product owner. Like I'm way more comfortable in the space of like give me a problem set and I can take that to a team and we'll get it done. And I've always, respected guys like you who are, you're out there like you're finding interesting articles in the news and like figuring out like what's the competition up to and like what's going on and in the larger trends. And those are just things that are usually a blind spot for me. I'm more of like day to day, like what is the team literally working on? I'm gonna, help clear this production bug or like get this team to help us out or those like more tactical things. So when I was a product manager, I always felt more of a product owner than that. But I find like it's hard. Some companies are in a little bit of an identity crisis. Like they don't know which of those that they want, you
Hmm.
know?
Absolutely, yeah. It's tough. I think that's one of the biggest challenges for, companies that were not digital first,
Yeah.
is identifying what does that really look like? What are the personality traits and what are the strengths and weaknesses of the people that you're hiring,
Yes.
to constitute an effective team? Because you can have a rock star product owner or you can have a rock star product manager, but if their skill set and interests just don't line up and don't add value to the team,
Yeah.
yeah, everybody's going to have a bad week.
Yeah. I just like spitballing some random thoughts. I feel like it'd almost be nice if you got in like I don't know. I recently was working in a slash delivery org, right? So it was delivery managers, product managers, and business analysts, and they had UX in there as well. And I like kind of grouping those together where it's product design is sort of the from like strategic to execution kind of all under one house. But I
Mm-hmm.
almost feel like it would be nice in some ways to just hire people with a blank job title. Like you're just like new recruit, and then we find what are you good at? Like what do you bring to your team? Because sometimes you've got a strength that's already covered by somebody.
Yep.
Sometimes, you are hired as a product manager and you end up being a product owner, but then you're like locked into this sort of like rigid contract, like that's your job title, like this is what you're supposed to do whether or not we need you to do that or not. So I don't know, I feel like having some wiggle room on what your job title is good, especially for people like us, because like I don't know, I feel like this is probably an overgeneralization, but I feel like people in our space that are good, when I think of like top performers, they're usually people that color outside the lines.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the people that you kind of think, oh man, I wish you would just like kind of grow a little bit, because they're just sticking to this like the description of their job application they applied for, like
Yeah, it's I think it stands out, I think, dramatically in the product space, but it's a problem that I think exists for all knowledge worker roles,
yeah,
um, particular, particularly with the advent of the internet and software development becoming something that's much more ubiquitous and much more ingrained in everybody's lives. It's not that people have no exposure to some of those skill sets.
yeah,
Um, like I can look at a web page and I can understand, okay, that's this works in the style sheet and blah blah blah. But I'm not going to sit down and write one. It doesn't interest me that deeply to learn that discipline that well, and I
yeah,
trust the but by being labeled as a product manager, I think that comes with it very much boxes you in.
yeah,
Just like saying somebody's an engineer. I always on my teams would prefer to have somebody who's an engineer but has interests outside of that and wants to understand design better, wants
yeah,
to understand marketing better, so that at the end of the day, I'm not necessary. You
right,
know, I would like it if everyone becomes multidisciplinary on the team to a greater or lesser extent and can help fill in the blanks for everybody else. But it's just, I think it's a carryover from non-knowledge work,
Yeah.
very widget industrialization has driven people to make these hierarchical assignments of what you contribute to the process. Thou
Yes.
shalt write user stories and thou shalt make decisions about scope.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I'm not really comfortable with that. I would really prefer that it's almost in a sense a team of product managers. We just have strengths that balance each other out in
Yeah.
different ways. But we're all essentially managing the product. We're just handling a greater responsibility in one domain than another than somebody else on the team.
Yeah.
But
That makes
I
a lot
don't
of
see that
sense.
happening. HR would probably not be happy with me. But
Well, it's tough to get like it's tough to get people with it's tough enough to hire product managers that have vision. Like, and I've talked to, new or junior product managers, and one of the biggest fears is like what do you call it? The imposter syndrome. Like,
mhm.
oh, I don't know how to come up with like brilliant ideas. Like, what am I going to do? There is a craft to doing it. Like, you don't have to be a genius to do it necessarily. You do have to be a little bit creative, but there is like a process where you can sort of generate ideas. But I feel like it's hard enough to get people that are comfortable in that, like, almost like, I don't know, it's this open playing field and you can fail. Like, you very much can
Yeah.
fail. But then it's tough to find somebody who has not only the understanding of that, but the ability to wrangle a team of them and like
Mhm.
keep them in the same direction without being a micromanager at the same time. Like, that's probably a unicorn out there, but that's, I feel like what you need for a successful team is somebody who's capable of being a little bit removed, but understanding how to like get all of the product managers rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's implicit in product development too that you have to have some latitude. And
Yeah.
you only get latitude if there's trust and psychological
Yes.
safety. And wow, that is tougher to come by sometimes than I would hope. But
There's
I guess
the
that
there's the dirty secret about the job is the psychological safety.
mhm, yeah, yeah. I if there was any warning that I'd give anybody coming out of business school that wants to get into product management, I'd say just be prepared to be a punching bag sometimes, and
Yeah.
you will lose more often than you win, but
Mhm.
that's okay.
Yeah.
It's learning. Yeah,
There's a lot of lessons learned the hard way.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And the great thing, I guess, is if you learn them the hard way, you don't forget them.
Yes, that's right.
The stuff that I learned in real life and business certainly has stuck with me a lot more than anything I read in an MBA book or a history of economics. That's
Yeah, for sure.
you know,
I was bringing up a new BA on one of my teams recently, earlier this year, actually, and she was getting like stressed out. Um, and I was like, well, just welcome to your new life. Like, this is how it is, like every day, always. You might have a little ramp up period, but yeah, you are going to be having to micromanage a million things. Maybe not micromanage, but you'll have to manage a bunch of minutia. And I feel like the one thing that separates the cream from the whatever the rest of the milk, I don't know.
cream from
Uh,
the curd.
yeah, exactly. Is that 80/20 thinking, is like being able to look at, it's a microcosm of your bigger job and prioritizing your backlog, but in your daily planning also, you're going to have, I don't know, realistically, I keep to-do lists. And I usually will have like 20 to 30 things to do in a workday. And then you've got 8 hours and you've got, 2 hours of meetings at least. So are you going to accomplish 30 things? You're going to do maybe I would like to say 4 or 5, but more like 2 things, you know?
Mhm.
So what are the top 2 things you're going to do? And you have to really understand how to prioritize and play defense on the things. It's like learning how to say no
Mhm.
respectfully and tactfully and explaining why, because we're focusing on this. I think that's the tough part.
Yeah, that's where that psychological safety is so important because within the team, I think one, you have to be comfortable saying no to people, and you have to work with people who can take being told no,
Yeah.
and that goes horizontally within teams and vertically within the organization. Um, Being able to manage that up is sometimes really, really tough. That's probably the only reason that product managers um, uh, look for grander titles or up the hierarchy is because then you're dealing with fewer sets of stakeholders that you have to say no to. I have to say it
Yeah.
as a VP of product. I have to say it to a CTO once versus to 15 different internal stakeholders.
Uniting
It's
the
the
fiefdoms is what I call it.
yeah.
Or you have to ride around to all the different, product managers, delivery managers, scrum masters, whoever your decision maker is on each delivery
Hmm.
team, and then key managers in those spaces, and then get them all on the same page. It's taxing.
Oh yeah, yeah. And you have to have good relationships with people, and you have to have
Yeah.
an organization that, by structure and by culture, actually encourages, I think, healthy exchange of ideas and opinions.
Yeah.
I've worked in some pretty toxic environments on both ends of the spectrum where very hierarchical and do what you're told and negative reinforcement. And then on the flip
Yeah.
side, ones that are toxically positive where you never really get any type of creative uh, juice going because you can't say no. You
Yes.
can't express an opinion that outside of the conventional wisdom of the group without it becoming a problem. And
Yeah.
either aspect is not healthy at
They're
all.
like they like meet on the other end of the circle, right? Because like
Yeah.
the hierarchical command and control, and then the toxically positive, it ends up being the
Hmm.
same. It's like if you disagree, now you're a negative person.
Yeah.
And I've struggled with that a lot because I'm highly critical thinker. I mean, I came up as a business analyst into it, and I think very critically about requirements. Why are we doing this? Is there any fat that we can cut off this project? Is there any scope to cut? Is there anything that should we challenge any of these thoughts? Um, I feel like putting that scrutiny when you're allowed to do it can lead to high success. But if
Hmm.
people don't understand why you're like that, and they're like, why aren't you just on board? Like, just say, yeah,
Right.
it's like, that's not who I am. That's not why I'm here, so
Yeah. No, that's a great call. Uh, I think the personalities that ask why are the ones that do exceptional work in product, and the ones that don't are. It's not that they're maybe doing a bad job in their org, but I don't think they're bringing anything new to the table for their teams. It's just kind of like that widget stamping.
yeah.
If you're not constantly challenging the why of why are we doing this.
Right. Yeah, I've always been brutally honest about those whys. And when we talk about like challenging times, every once in a while the stars do align, and then you have like a rock star team and you're working on
Mm-hmm.
something that's valuable and everything's great. That's like when the job is really wonderful. But that's when also people ask you, why are you doing it? And you have a very clear, good answer. It's like, it's for our customers is usually the right reason, you know. But when you end up having to be like, well, because you know big boss said so, it's
Mm-hmm.
probably not the right thing for us to do, and everyone knows it. it's not too long before, and that's how I've become almost a little bit of Nostradamus in different organizations, because you can tell when like bad times are coming down the line, is because that's when you start to tell that to your team. They're like, why are we doing this? Well, if I'm trying to be more tactful as I grow and learn lessons, but sometimes you're like, well, we've been ordered to do this. Like we've been told to charge
Mhm.
the machine gun nest. It's not going to
Right.
be fun. We have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think having charged a lot of machine gun nests, I think you and I both understand it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to mitigate the risk to the team and to yourself and to the business, even though you know it may be just a Pyrrhic task that you've been assigned and you've tried your darndest, but
Yeah.
it's gonna either somebody's gonna do it. It's either gonna be you or it's gonna be some other schmo that comes along behind you.
That's right.
So you might,
Yeah,
might
you
as
are
well charge.
you are replaceable. It doesn't matter if
Yeah,
you're good at what you do.
yeah, absolutely. Yep. And it helps too sometimes if you got to suck it up and make the big boss happy by taking on some task. It can be currency in the exchange of
Yeah,
favors in the organization, and that's just part of being a grown up in business too. So you have
that's
to
right.
suck it up. And, yeah.
Yeah, there is the office politics aspect of it, which is, I think, sometimes it's tougher for some people to play. I admittedly am one of those, but it's something I've learned also. I mean, I've been working in the industry 10 years now, and it's like something that I know that I have to really kind of suck it up and get better at. I like to be
Mhm.
just like a straight shooter, say what I mean what I say, but there are also times to use tact. I want to be, I always want to lean on I'll use tact ethically, because when you're doing a job like this, a lot of times you don't have direct managerial authority. Your authority is earned, which is a
Mhm.
big difference between people who rely on their hierarchy for their management, that just do what I say because I'm the boss, it's my say, versus actually having to convince people of your ideas, and also to like earn their trust through
Yeah.
showing them like, not only am I competent, but I can help you out here so you can help me out later. Let's work together. It's like forging those relationships. It's really important.
Yeah, that's true. And I think culturally in general that as far as we are from what I would consider an ideal world of, you know, rainbows and butterflies and everybody is able to do what they want, and form self-organizing teams and
Yeah.
has a lot of autonomy. I also came into the industry at a time right around 2000, 2001, when I first got into software QA, and it was very much hierarchical. It was
Yeah.
very command and control. And even worse when I went back over to the operations side of things.
Hmm.
And so I kind of had to learn the hard way as a first time manager how to how to gain authority through acts of service, right?
Yeah.
Like helping people on your team get shit done is a really good way to earn authority and
Yes.
earn credibility that you can then cash in later in your relationship and say, okay, now you trust me when I say try this technique. It isn't a fight.
Right.
And it's not me saying you must do it this way, but try it.
Yeah.
Help them before.
Yeah.
So
It's yeah, servant leadership. It's not just a book you put on the shelf in your office.
yeah, yes. Um, it is tricky, I think, because you have to take your ego out of it a little bit, and that Lord knows my ego is big enough that that can be challenging. So, but you have to take your ego out of it and think about what's the best for the team
Yeah.
and what's for the product and what's best for your customer. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's not what you want to do, but
Right. I think that that's the tricky part, and it's I don't know. I don't actually know what the right answer is, but kind of circling back to one of the things we were talking about earlier, which is having that like psychological safety in product. I feel
Mhm.
like if you want to serve your customers the best, you need a product team that has the ability, or your product development talent are able to explore and like try things that might not work. And it's
Yeah.
okay if they don't. You do have to figure out how to, I hate the phrase fail fast, because I mean, I feel like it's abused a lot, but like you want to test things with a low cost is really what you want to do, right? And find out, like, poke at the market, figure out what does work, try different things, and having the ability to, yeah, we made a bad call, we thought this was going to happen but it didn't, and then not be looked at as a failure for that. It's a difficult environment to create. And then, on the other side of that coin, companies are trying to tighten up their belts, especially when the economy gets rough, and then they want to only they only want a guaranteed return on investment,
Yeah.
which, I've seen them, they oscillate because they go way loosey goosey. Let's just try weird things and let's not fail fast. Let's just like fail very slowly. And then the
Hmm.
economy gets tight and they're like, oh, let's lay everybody off now. We're going to work
Right.
on fundamentals. It's like, there is a middle path there, but I don't know. I think that's a difficult thing to strike the balance of, is how do you allocate some budget for play in there and then not end up, hacking your staff into pieces. Because those layoffs, man, I'm telling you, like, they're awful for your morale. And not only
Hmm.
does it just destroys your productivity for like what, a year, maybe,
Yeah. Because that's
even,
all anybody is talking about over the water cooler.
yeah,
Is, are we going to have another one this fall? Is how is so and so doing? I haven't seen them in a while.
yep.
Yeah.
And then people
Yeah.
jump ship too. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's ironic that as companies tighten their belts up and kind of seize the reins of decision making, particularly in product, it's not like the risks have gotten any less that you're going to make the wrong decision. I
right.
think that thinking that way is very much the hierarchical. I got to be CTO because I'm Big Brain Bob, and
Right.
so I know what the right thing to do is. Well, if Big Brain Bob um, is thinking rationally, he's just as likely to make the wrong decision on the product as anybody else below him.
Yeah.
Even by accident, it may not have anything. The wrong thing may not have anything to do with the quality of the experience of the person who's making the decision too.
Yeah.
That's that's the big thing about agile, is you understand that there are externalities outside of your control,
Yes.
and that life is a series of making continuous adjustments
Yes.
to context that you're in, whether that was by choice, things that were under your control, or whether they were environmental conditions.
And
So,
remember your customers, right? I mean, that's the thing about it, is like, most people in this business that have been in it for a while and have earned their stripes are generally pretty smart people, right?
mm-hmm.
And the thing about it is, though, is it's not a problem that a smart person just sits down and solves with a genius idea. Like,
Yep.
every once in a while that happens, but you're just looking at survivorship bias if you're going to
Mm-hmm.
take any of those cases, because that's what the craft of product is, right? Is testing the market. Like, how many super smart entrepreneurs are out there and then they've gone through a bunch of failures? um like, you have to be able to have some sort of an approach to testing that hypothesis and then iterating on it. It's the craft and learning
Yep.
how to like operate that feedback loop is really what product managers, I feel like, what they need to be,
Yep.
focusing on, right? And that's what the big brain Bob is oftentimes overlooking. Doesn't understand that. Thinks that, oh, we're going to have one big silver bullet. I've got this genius idea,
Mm-hmm.
and whether or not it was like I had beers with my, buddy who sold a business for $5 million or whatever the case is of where you got this wonderful idea. Do your customers think it's a good idea? It's what they
Oh,
forgot about.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that the landscape of the last 25 years is littered with ideas that were fantastic
Yeah.
and the timing was wrong,
Yeah.
or the customer base, let's say we're headed into a recession, and so you had a very high value. It was a great idea for hitting the very elite top of the market, but their disposable income got locked up in investments that they couldn't deal with. So it's just that there is a random nature to the universe, and you've got to be, I think you've got to be able to roll with the punches of being wrong.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, I think you also have to be willing to admit, which I think some of the big brain bobs don't, is that the universe can do stuff to you when it can make you a wild success,
Hmm.
and it can make you a complete failure in objective terms through no difference in your behavior.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
that's the way the world works.
Yep.
So it doesn't make you a genius when your product takes the world by storm.
Yeah.
uh, it doesn't make you an idiot when it fails.
Sure.
I think a high degree of stoicism is a healthy thing for
Yeah,
product managers.
for sure.
What you can control is your reaction to it, and the degree to which you can control your reaction to it, and how you deal with circumstances is at the heart of it. That I think is a good measuring stick for success.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I need to take a dose of that medicine quite often myself, but yeah, I feel like Marcus Aurelius should be like mandatory reading for all product people.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, nobody's perfect at it. Lord knows I struggle with it all the time. But as with a lot of things in product, I think it has to do with the ego and how you deal with your ego, how you deal with other people's egos, and their ids and desires. So there's probably some really loosey goosey psychological aspects to product management that,
Yeah, yeah, I think that's
yeah,
true. There's just a very much a human element. Like it's way more of an art than a science. You can learn
yeah,
the tactical techniques, and it's like 20% or less of your job after that. Most of it
hmm
is a lot of it is just how to win friends and influence people, and how to navigate a creative environment and a unique landscape of whatever domain you're working in.
yeah. I think if you can, if you can, what's the phrase I was looking for? Yeah, I think it's empathy is
Yeah.
probably at the core of it too. And empathy for other people doesn't necessarily mean thinking like other people, but at least trying to understand how they are interpreting their context and what motivates them. And um, I've had some interviews for product management roles where we talked a little bit about those things, and maybe it came off as too academic or philosophical, but I think it's just one of those first principles um, that I would really encourage product owners who want to get into product management, or product managers who want to get to the next level and want to be directors, is empathy is a skill that helps in every single arena of the job. So the more you can practice it in your personal life,
Yeah,
and in your professional life, you're going to reap nothing but benefits.
it's very true.
So yeah, that's my soapbox statement for the day.
uh well, we're coming up on time here. I don't know, what do you think? Should we wrap this? Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think this was a fun talk. I say it all the time. I could talk for hours about product management and not get bored, but the listeners might get tired of hearing me after 40 minutes. So we'll
Yeah,
move on
well,
to.
maybe let's not make this like a Joe Rogan length one, but I don't know if you'd be interested. Maybe let's do this again sometime, man.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, I'd love to. Got
Awesome.
plenty of more material. Plenty more
Yeah,
material.
for sure. I didn't even get into, I wanted to talk a little bit about like some things that product should spend more time thinking about. And one of them was um, looking back at what you've done and actually assessing the results of it. Like big key piece that's oft overlooked, I feel like. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of other stuff I think we could chat about.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I think that'd be a really interesting topic for sure.
Nice. We've got a few mutual friends as well, so let me see if we can do like some collabs and stuff. I've been pinging other people to see if they want to come on and chat. So
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, I'd love to be part of a panel and that'd be fun.
yeah, right on. All right, well, thanks for your time, Geoff. I appreciate you taking some time to chat, and yeah, we'll put this out there. I'm gonna probably blast it on LinkedIn. We'll get it out on YouTube, and we'll see if anybody watches this.
Sounds good. Let's hope Big Bob Brains they go to a different one. But
That's right. Yeah. All right, man. Take care.
man. Yep, you too. Have a good one.